Welcome, Dan Williams, Survive Outdoors, Wilderness Medicine. And I am sorry I've been absent for a while. Part of the reason for that is picking up a few hours at the clinic, and I am back now. So what I spoke about briefly at the end of the last video was we're going to address some psychology of dominating fear in the outdoors, which is rarely discussed, and what happens when someone gets lost and injured or lost. As some of you may know, I have a doctorate in clinical psych, and years ago when I had a private practice, I dealt a lot with children and adults dealing with anxiety and fear. So first we're going to talk about the foundation of where that originates from. And it's not a all or none here. There are many times where an incident or a trauma will occur in adolescence and young adulthood, and that'll cause fear and anxiety, and that gets transformed in other places in your life. But if you think about it, little kids, 3 years old, 4 years old, they're picking up spiders, they're picking up snakes. They have this absence of fear. And fear is a lot of times learned behavior. It's learned behavior because parents frequently drop the ball. You have either, on one extreme, you have the dramatic histrionic parent. Oh my God, there is a crisis, and it scares the hell out of the kid. And this happens repetitiously, and the kid observes this behavior, and later that transforms into fear. Or you have the conflict avoidance, where the kid, there are problems, there's a crisis, there's a trauma, and they have learned not to address it. So they have not a clue on how to deal with stress and anxiety when it occurs. So on both extremes, that induces anxiety and fear, and that's carried on. You can just imagine going out into the woods and you're hiking and you get lost, God forbid, lost and injured. When you are scared and when you are frightened, what happens is the adrenal glands on top of your kidneys start secreting epinephrine, norepinephrine, and your heart races, your hands get sweaty, you have increased urination, and you become a mess. And those symptoms then cycle, you ruminate on those, and you just make them worse. And I have talked to individuals who've been hurt in the outdoors where this occurs and they start running and trying to find their way out of the woods, and then they get injured even more. So anxiety and fear leads to bad choices, leads to more injuries, more often than not. So lost versus very lost, is there a difference? Well, yeah, there is. You'll see these guys, even my father back in the day, ex-Marine Corps, hard-nosed, outdoor kind of guy, if he got lost, he never got lost. Because if he got lost, he just got turned around. That's what a lot of guys and hunters, you'll find that frequently, they'll just deny it. I was not lost, I was just turned around. I knew where I was at the whole time. And then there's very lost, and where you're not getting back that day. And that's why one of the first most important things to do is let your loved ones know where you're going to be and when you think you're coming back. I don't care if you're in the Tetons, you're in the Midwest, on the Northeast coast in Maine, doesn't matter. That is imperative that you do that. I'm going to talk about a case that occurred 2 years ago in southeast Missouri, which I know that terrain really well. I only grew up about an hour and a half from where this occurred, and it's a very, very sad situation. As you can see here on this article, a Missouri man and his 2 children and their Labrador puppy went out hiking in the mountainous territory similar to the Ozarks of southeast Missouri. Basically the weather turned, they missed a trail, and it started raining. Temp is in the low 50s, high 40s. He had a sweater, a light jacket on. They had their lab puppy with them, and the boys, I can't remember their ages, one was about 7, one was a little older. And then it started raining, and the temperature then dropped to about 20, 25 degrees below freezing, and they don't have a lot of warm clothes, nor did he have the ability to start a fire. And he had a cell phone and a flashlight, which both died on him. And they ended up, and all three were deceased, and the lab puppy stayed with him all night. And the guy was ex-Air Force. And I am sure if he was here today that he would want this story discussed of what you can do and what you could have done better before going out. Very, very traumatic story that occurred. So you never know when something's going to happen. I don't even care if you're a quarter of a mile in your backyard. You could have an injury, you could have a tree fall on you, your phone runs out of juice, and what are you going to do in those situations? So, and I am going to put down below a video that I did earlier about getting lost and what you should do. One of the first things you should do is put up, if you have some yellow duct tape or some type of highly fluorescent orange or those space blankets, cut them in strips, go to all four directions, put them as high as you can. That's really important. And then stay put. Anyway, I want you to check the link out in the description on that video. One of the psychodynamics, if you will, theoretical premises that I really want you to take home from this video. It's really, really important in terms of anxiety and fear. It's not the death in the family. It's not the massive argument that occurred. It is not the divorce. It is not the buying a house. It is not the event of getting lost in the woods or getting injured in the wood that causes the anxiety and fear. And you're going to go, well, that makes no sense. It's how you approach it. So why is it that person A has a situation of a major crisis and absolutely blows it out of proportion, but person B has same degree of crisis, same issue, but deals with it much better? And it really depends on how you approach the event. It's not the stress that causes the stress, it's how you approach the stress and how you deal with that. And this is something that I've talked a lot about with my children, and it's really important at the age of even 7, 8, 9, 10 years old. Take your kids out, get them lost, be with them, and see how they handle that after you've spoke to them about how to deal with those situations. You can even take your kid out and have him sit there at 12, go hide behind a hill and you know, take some binocs and observe him. How is he dealing with that? Is he going to get scared? Is he going to start screaming, Dad, Mom, where are you at? Or can they handle that situation? Really, really important. And really, a lot of people don't do this. They don't practice in case something occurs later on, and God forbid, where they would get lost in the woods. So I've spoken in the past about the Hug a Tree Foundation. This goes for adults too. Because if you're in a spot and you're lost and you move out of that situation, especially if they're doing flyovers and they grid you out, you're going to move out of that grid and they may not find you then for 3 or 4 days. Stay put. Hug a tree. Extremely important to keep your butt right there. All right? Now, in certain situations, yes, okay, there's always exceptions to that rule. But that is really imperative to do, is to stay put. So how to decrease the anxiety and fear in a situation where you have a severely sprained ankle, broken ankle, and you're lost, phone is out of juice. What are you going to do? Clearly, I really don't need to mention, but I will, you know, assess the situation for shelter and warmth, fire, water. You need to look at, do you have any kind of food, snacks, whatever, and you need to plan for the moment and for the next 24 to 48. Depending on the situation, could be longer, but that definitely should be done. Breathing exercises. If you find yourself panicking and you're tachycardic, your heart is racing, there are many breathing exercises that you can do. It takes about 5 minutes to learn it and then some practice, and we can address those at a later date on how to do those breathing exercises. Work fantastic to decrease your heart rate, and it works really, really well. With ADHD kids, back when I had my practice, I did something called a survival knot. Just take a piece of paracord and have it in their pack and you tie it in a bunch of friggin' knots, just like you would, you see Christmas lights where you're cursing and the Chevy Chase has this huge knot. Have them sit down and they try to untie this knot over time. One, you're going to be assessing patience in the kid, and how are they going to tolerate that. It also distracts them, gets their mind off of this situation, because a lot of kids are going to panic, even adults. I don't care if it's whittling. You need to do something after you've done the basics and you're prepared. You need to do something to distract yourself from that crisis. Yes, you need to address it, but you also need to get yourself together and not be in a panic state. So that's really important also. So practice these techniques. Really, you don't know when it's going to happen. Really important. Practice your fire making ability, practice your breathing exercises, practice about it's not the event, it's how you approach the event. Look at yourself, look at what triggers your fear and anxiety. So look at those things. Until next time, keep your eyes on the horizon, your face to the wind. Stay safe, guys.